while the rest of the small Colorado town of Oakhaven settled into quiet family lunches or the drone of afternoon football. Elias would be miles above, pushing his body to its limits. He'd start before dawn, his breath pluming in the beam of his headlamp, and hike until his legs burned and his lungs ached. He sought the exhaustion. He craved the silence. His life was built on this kind of predictable, solitary strength. At 34, he was the rock, the man who had managed his family's affairs after his father left, the man who stepped in for his best friend, Leo, becoming a surrogate son to Leo's mother, Elena, while Leo was deployed, the man his younger sisters, Sarah and Nina, still called first when a tire was flat or a heart was broken. Elias was the fixer, the constant, the mountain. And like a mountain, he was, in many ways, alone. That day, the hike had been brutal. A late-season squall had blown in, and he'd spent the last 2 hours navigating a treacherous ridge in biting wind and whiteout conditions. Now, as he descended, the sun was a dying ember, casting the valley below in a deep, bruised violet. The sharp, clean scent of spruce and snow filled his lungs. He was tired, the bone-deep weariness he loved. His mind was quiet, empty, ready for rest. His truck was the only one left at the trailhead. He cranked the heater, the warm air stinging his chapped face as he drove the winding road back to his small, isolated house on the edge of the national forest. He pulled into his driveway, the gravel crunching under his tires. He paused. Elena's car was there. That wasn't unusual. She often dropped by to leave him a casserole or to borrow a book. But Sarah's beat-up sedan was parked behind it, and Nina's little blue hatchback was parked behind that. All three of them, here, on a Sunday night. A cold, electric tension pricked at the back of his neck, sharper than the evening air. It was a disruption of the pattern, and Elias hated disruptions. He grabbed his pack, his keys jingling loudly in the silence. He walked to his front door, his boots heavy on the wooden steps. He put his key in the lock, turned it, and pushed the door open. Sound of a door opening to silence. A ticking clock. He was expecting the familiar, comforting quiet of an empty house. Instead, he was met with a stillness so heavy it felt like a physical weight. 3 women were sitting in his living room, silhouetted against the large picture window that looked out onto the darkening woods. They were perfectly still, as if they'd been arranged for a portrait. His sisters, Sarah and Nina, sat side by side on the love seat. Their hands were tightly, almost painfully, knotted together in their laps. Beside them, in his worn leather armchair, sat Elena. She was 56, with a quiet grace that Elias had always admired. She'd been a constant, gentle presence in his life for over 20 years. His second mother in all but blood. Elias froze in the doorway, his keys still dangling from his hand. What? He started, his voice rough from the cold air. What's going on? No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound in the room was the loud, rhythmic tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the corner. Sarah, always the bolder of his sisters, looked up. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and strained. Nina just stared at her own hands, her shoulders hunched. Elena offered a small, sad smile that never came close to reaching her eyes. It was the smile of someone delivering terrible news. Elias, she said, her voice quiet, but seeming to fill the entire room. We're sorry to ambush you like this. Please, come in. He shut the door slowly. The click of the latch sounded final, like a trap springing shut. You all look like you're at a funeral, he said, trying to force a lightness into his tone. The joke died instantly. His heart, which had been slow and steady from the hike, began to hammer a heavy, panicked rhythm against his ribs. He walked further into the room, dropping his pack by the door. Is it Leo? He asked, his gaze snapping to Elena. Did something happen? Is he okay? Elena shook her head, a slow, deliberate motion. No, Leo's fine. He's safe. This isn't about Leo. Then what? He looked from Sarah to Nina to Elena and back again. The confusion was hardening into a sharp, cold dread. Why are you all here, looking like this? It was Sarah who spoke, her voice so low he had to strain to hear it. We came because we didn't know how else to do this. Elias, do what? To talk to you, Nina whispered, not looking up. About us? Us? Elias frowned. What about us? If this is about money, or the old house, you know, Elle, it's not that. Sarah cut in, her voice suddenly sharp, brittle. She stood up, her hands twisting at her waist. It's not about money. It's not about any of that. Then what? Sarah, just say it. You're scaring me. Sarah took a deep, shuddering breath, her eyes, glistening with unch tears, locked with his. The words, when they came, were ripped from her. We love you, Elias. He stared at her. A wave of exhausted frustration washed over him. I love you too. Sarah, you're my sister. I love all of you. What is this? No, she took a step toward him, shaking her head. No, you don't understand. I love you. Not as a brother. The air left Elias's lungs. The ticking of the clock seemed to stop. The entire world narrowed to his sister's pale, desperate face. What did you say? He whispered. He must have misheard. The altitude, the exhaustion. He was hallucinating. I said. Sarah's voice cracked. That I am in love with you. I have been for years. I've tried to date other men. I've tried to ignore it. I've told myself it's sick, that it's wrong, but it doesn't. Go away. And I can't live with it anymore. I can't. Elias staggered back, his hand fumbling for the wall to steady himself. Sarah, stop. That's not funny. It's not right. He turned, his eyes wide with panic, searching for his other sister, for the sane one. Nina, tell her to stop. Tell her she's just upset about something. Nina slowly lifted her head. Her face was ashen, and tears were now spilling freely, tracing silent paths down her cheeks. She nodded. She's right. Elias, Nina whispered, her voice trembling so badly he could barely make out the words. I feel it too. No, Elias breathed. No, Nina, not you too. I've tried to fight it. She choked out, her gaze fixed on the floor. I've told myself I'm twisted, that it's just because you've always protected me. But it's not. It's more. It's everything. And I'm so tired of hiding it. The room began to spin. A hot, sick feeling rose in his throat. This wasn't real. It was a nightmare. His sisters. His head snapped toward Elena. She was his last anchor. The adult. The voice of reason. She would end this. She would fix this. Elena, he said, his voice a desperate plea. Tell them what they're saying. Tell them to stop this madness. Elena stood up slowly from the armchair. She didn't look angry. She didn't look disgusted. Her face was a mask of profound, aching sorrow. She walked toward him, her gaze steady, and cupped his face in her hands. Her palms were warm against his icy skin. Oh, Elias, she whispered. My dear boy. Elena, please, he begged. I wish I could, she said, her own voice cracking. I wish I could tell you they're wrong. I've watched you grow from a boy who lost his father into this incredible, steady man. I told myself for years that my affection was motherly, that I was just grateful for how you cared for me, for how you've been a brother to Leo. She paused, and a single tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. But it's not true. It hasn't been true for a very long time. I have fought it. Elias, I have prayed against it. But I love you too, in a way a mother shouldn't love a son. Elias ripped her hands from his face and stumbled back, the sickness rising. No, he shouted, his voice echoing in the small, silent house. Stop it, all of you. He looked at their faces. Sarah's, fierce and desperate. Nina's, broken and ashamed. Elena's, calm and utterly resolved. This is sick, he whispered, his body shaking. It's wrong. You're my sisters, my sisters. And you, he pointed a trembling finger at Elena. You're Leo's mother. You're my mother. We know, Sarah cried, her voice rising to a shout. Don't you think we know? Don't you think we've tortured ourselves with that every single day? But what's more wrong, Elias? Living a lie for the rest of our lives? being so lonely it feels like we're drowning, or finally telling the truth. This isn't the truth. He yelled, it's a sickness. You need help. All of you, is it? Elena's voice was sharp now, cutting through his panic. Is it sick? Or are we just for lonely people who have, through some twist of fate, found our only comfort in each other? You've been our rock, Elias. You've been the husband I lost, the father they never had, the partner we've all secretly longed for. You've been everything to us. And we are asking you to not be afraid of that. Afraid? He laughed, a short, hysterical bark. I'm not afraid. I'm disgusted. The word hit them like a physical blow. Sarah flinched as if he'd struck her. Nina let out a small, wounded sob and buried her face in her hands. Elena's face crumpled, her quiet resolve shattering. Silence descended again, heavier this time. Poison. Elias stared at the three women, the three most important people in his world, and felt nothing but a cold, horrifying revulsion. Get out, he whispered. Elias, please, Sarah begged, taking a step toward him. I said, get out, he roared, pointing at the door. All of you, get out of my house, now. Nina scrambled to her feet, grabbing her coat and running out the door, her sobs echoing in the drive. Sarah stared at him for one long, heartbreaking moment, her face a mask of betrayal, before turning and following her sister. Elias was left alone with Elena. She hadn't moved. She just watched him, her eyes full of a pain so deep he couldn't bear to look at it. She slowly picked up her purse. We didn't mean to break you, Elias, she said softly. We couldn't bear being broken ourselves anymore. We're not asking for an easy life. We're asking for an honest one. We are three women who are lost, and you are the only home we've ever really known. She walked to the door, her steps measured and dignified. We'll be at my house if you can find a way to see past this. If you can't, then I suppose this is goodbye. She opened the door and walked out into the cold, dark night. Sound of a door closing gently. Elias stood alone in his living room for a long time. The house was silent again, but the silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was loud. It was suffocating. It was filled with the echoes of their words. I love you, not as a brother. I feel it too. I love you, in a way a mother shouldn't. He stumbled to the kitchen sink and retched, his body convulsing, but nothing came up. There was just the cold, empty heave of his stomach. He was shaking uncontrollably. He had faced down blizzards, injuries, and isolation on the mountain. He had buried Elena's husband. He had held his sisters through every crisis. He was the rock. And in 10 minutes, they had turned him into rubble. His first instinct was to run, to pack his bag, get in his truck, and drive until Oakhaven was a distant memory, to find a new mountain, a new solitude, a new life where this perversion didn't exist. He grabbed his keys. He grabbed his wallet. He pulled on the jacket he'd just taken off and stormed out of the house, leaving the lights on and the front door unlocked. He got in his truck, cranked the engine, and peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying. He drove. He drove with the windows down, letting the icy air blast his face, hoping it would numb his thoughts. He drove up the pass, the tires whining on the cold asphalt. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to escape. You're my sisters. The words looped in his head. Sarah, who he'd taught to ride a bike. Nina, who he'd held after her first nightmare. Their faces, pale and small, looking at him with trust. And Elena, who had packed him lunches when he and Leo were teenagers, who had given him her husband's favorite wool sweater after the funeral, saying, he would have wanted you to have it. You're the man of the house now, Elias. How could they twist all that love, all that shared history, into this? He drove for hours, climbing higher and higher until the road was just a narrow cut between towering snowbanks. The moon was a sliver of ice in a black sky. He finally pulled over at a scenic overlook, the one place he'd always come to think. The valley was a sea of darkness, with the small, scattered lights of Oakhaven glittering far below. He got out of the truck and leaned against the hood. The cold was brutal. It bit through his jacket instantly. He didn't care. He tried to feel the disgust again, the revulsion. But as he stood there, in the vast, cold emptiness of the mountains, something else began to surface. A memory. He was 22. Sarah was 16. She'd had her heart shattered by her first serious boyfriend. Elias had found her crying in her room. He'd sat with her, and she'd cry into his shirt for an hour. When she finally quieted, she hadn't let go. She had held onto him, her breathing slow and even. He'd felt a strange warmth, a possessiveness. He'd told himself it was just protective, brotherly. He pushed the memory away. But another took its place. Nina. Just last year, she'd been struggling with her art, deep in a depression. He'd gone to her small apartment and found her surrounded by canvases, her hands covered in paint, her eyes hollow. He'd spent the day with her, cleaning her brushes, making her soup. That evening, she'd fallen asleep on his sofa. He'd covered her with a blanket and sat watching her for a long time. He'd noticed the elegant curve of her neck, the small, vulnerable line of her mouth. He'd felt a tenderness so fierce it hurt. He'd told himself it was just care. He turned his face to the wind, his eyes stinging. And then, Elena. After Leo's first deployment, she had been a wreck, terrified, alone in her big house. Elias had gone over every single night for dinner. They'd sat on her porch, talking for hours. One night, a cold snap had come in. She'd shivered. He'd taken off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She had looked up at him, her eyes, not motherly, not then. They had been the eyes of a woman, a lonely woman. She had leaned her head, just for a second, against his chest, and he hadn't pulled away. He had felt it. He had felt it all. His disgust wasn't for them. His disgust was for himself. He wasn't repulsed because their feelings were alien. He was repulsed because they were familiar. He had buried his own wrong feelings under the heavy, safe title of protector. He had built his entire identity as the rock so he would never have to look at the strange, tangled, and terrifying emotions that lay beneath. He wasn't the mountain. He was the volcano, and they had just uncorked him. He looked down at the lights of Oakhaven, at the cluster of lights where he knew Elena's house was, where the three most important people in his world were huddled together, believing he had abandoned them, believing he was disgusted by them. He realized, with a horrifying clarity, that he had a choice. He could drive away. He could go find his new, cold, empty life. He could be right. He could be normal. He could be alone. Or he could go back. He could go back to the house and face the truth. Not just their truth, but his truth. That these three women, in their own broken, beautiful, and terrifying ways, were his home. That his love for them wasn't simple. It wasn't platonic. It was vast and complicated, and probably, to the rest of the world, monstrous. But it was real. He looked up at the cold, uncaring stars. He had always found comfort in their distance. Tonight, he hated them for it. He got back in his truck. The engine turned over, a roar in the crushing silence. He didn't drive away. He drove back down the mountain. Sound of a car pulling into a driveway. An engine cutting off. Elena's house was dark, except for a single, warm light in the living room window. He walked to the front door. His legs felt like lead. This was harder than any mountain he'd ever climbed. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely lift it to knock. He didn't have to. The door swung open. Elena was standing there, her face etched with sleepless worry. She had clearly been watching for him. Behind her, in the hallway, he could see Sarah and Nina, their faces pale and tear-streaked. No one spoke. Elias looked at Elena, at Sarah, at Nina. He saw their fear, their desperation, their hope. His throat was dry. His voice, when it came, was a raw whisper. "I don't know how this works," he said, his whole body trembling. I don't know what this is. And I am terrified." He met Elena's eyes. "I don't know if we can survive this. I don't know if I can." He took a deep, ragged breath. "But I can't leave you." "I tried. I can't." A small, broken sound came from Nina. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Elena's eyes, which had been wide with dread, softened. She reached out and took his freezing, trembling hand. You don't have to know how it works, Elias, she whispered, her voice thick with unch tears. None of us do. We'll just have to figure it out. She gently pulled him forward. Come inside, she said. Come in from the cold. He stepped across the threshold, and the three women moved around him. The door closed, shutting out the world. The first few weeks were a minefield of excruciating awkwardness. They existed in a strange, liminal space. They were no longer the family they had been, but they had no idea what they were supposed to become. They spent those first nights at Elena's in neutral territory. Elias slept on the sofa, a profoundly unhelpful gesture, as the living room was central to the two bedrooms where the women slept. Every time one of them got up for a glass of water, he would pretend to be asleep, his entire body rigid with tension. Meals were silent, agonizing affairs. They would sit at Elena's kitchen table, the same table where they had shared hundreds of comfortable, easy meals. And now, the clinking of silverware was deafening. Sarah, desperate to break the tension, would try too hard. It's a beautiful day out, she'd say, her voice unnaturally bright. Yes, lovely, Elena would reply, not looking up from her plate. Nina wouldn't speak at all. She just pushed her food around, her eyes fixed on her lap. Elias, for his part, felt like a stranger in his own skin. He had built his life on being the fixer, the man with the answers. Now, he was the source of the problem, and he was completely, terrifyingly lost. The physical boundaries were a nightmare. A simple, accidental brush of hands in the hallway would cause them all to freeze. The easy, platonic affection that had defined them, a hug at the door, an arm slung over a shoulder, was gone, replaced by a chasm of suffocating self-awareness. One evening, about a week in, Elias was in the kitchen washing dishes. He heard Nina come in. He tensed, his back to her, scrubbing a plate far harder than necessary. He heard her take a small, shuddering breath. I'm sorry, Elias, she whispered. He stopped scrubbing, but didn't turn around. For what, Nina? For this, for making you, for ruining everything. I wish I'd never said it. I wish I could take it.